So this is the second of a series of conversations that we could start. I don't think it's going to be a definitive conversation about the topic. I think it's the first of many, but we've got to start somewhere. So this topic has come out of the first conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, which was much more broadly about circus at a distance. We started focusing in a little bit more on how performance can exist in the digital space. So after 2 months of lockdown, with all of our performance spaces closed, the immediate need that we had at the beginning to share work, which was driven out of generosity and community and a desire to see work, seems to be fading. And I think this conversation is about how actually we can start to think about making work of quality for the digital space. So how we can translate the skills that we have in the live environment to make work that is as alive online. And that isn't to say that the thinking is that digital work will replace the live experience. It's a different space, but what do we need to think about as practitioners to start to think about, if we want to make work in that space, how do we make it really good quality? Okay. The way that this conversation works is it's not a panel discussion, but we have invited a few guests who we think might have something very specific to offer the conversation, but you're all invited to talk and discuss this idea, because I think the best ideas and the best thinking emerges through discussion. In a minute, I'm going to invite the people that we have brought in specifically to either share a perspective or who we feel have some expertise or some interest in this area to speak a little bit. Some might introduce themselves, some might say a little bit more and offer a provocation to help stimulate the conversation. Before that, it would be great if we could just go around the room and everybody could just say hello, just say their name and where they're from. Not a massive long introduction, but just so that we can connect a voice and a name with a face. After that, we'll invite these provocations, and then we're going to talk. So the way I see it is it's a little bit like a dinner. There's some food going to be put on the table, and we're all going to eat, we're all going to discuss, and we're going to talk. And we might find points of interest and points of conversion. It might go in different directions. There are a few features in Zoom that might be useful to help us have a fluid conversation. Make good use of the mute button. So if you're not talking, if you can keep yourself muted, but if you're invited to speak, if you could unmute yourself so that everyone can hear you. If you want to say something or have a comment to make or a question in relation to what's being discussed, if you put your hand up, or you can use the hand up reaction, which I just discovered, then we'll come to you. And if there are lots of hands up, we'll come in order of the hands as we see them go up. If you have a thought or a question or a comment that you want to share, but that's not related to the immediate discussion, please stick it in chat. And it might be something that we come back to, or it might just be a space just to log that thinking or that idea that you had. Other than that, I think that's it. And we're going to go around and just everybody just say hello and your name.
So I'm going to go across in the order that you appear on my screen, and then you can just unmute yourself and then mute yourself again when you're finished, and I'll invite the next person. So to start, my name's Claire, not Upswing as it says on there, and I'm the general manager at Upswing, and I'm going to scoot on over now to Donna.
Oh, hi everyone, I'm Donna Close. I'm a creative producer, a cultural strategist, meaning I write cultural strategies, and a senior research fellow at the University of Brighton. And I'll talk more about my work as we go through.
Great, and over to B.
Hi, I'm Beatrice, yeah, I was interested in the conversation as I saw the replay of the previous session, and I'm a performer and maker.
Joe, hello Joe.
Hi everyone, I'm Joe. I run a school in Birmingham called Circus Mash.
Great. Kate, Webb.
Hi everyone, I'm a senior lecturer at Circus Media and doing projects and development for Circus Media as well.
Over to Amy Nichols.
Hello, I co-run Laverack Circus. We're a small Bristol-based circus company.
And Jomana.
Hi, I'm Jumana. I'm the director of Ijad Dance Company and Open Online Theatre. I work across the digital and with the digital and the physical.
Lissy.
Hi, I'm Lissy. I'm normally the executive director of Member, where I work with Lena, but exhilaratingly, I furloughed myself on Friday. So if anyone asks, I'm here in a personal capacity.
Mark, hello Mark.
Hello, I'm speaking to you here from the top of the 102 bus. So I am a retired, no, I'm not a retired circus artist. I'm still a circus artist, still making performance, but mostly working in the digital realm, making video and interactive content for performance and documentation of work. Hope that makes sense. I'm not awake yet.
Summer and Raphael. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, we're Double Take Cinematic Circus. I'm Summer. This is Raphael. We are circus acrobats and filmmakers. Voila.
She's from Florida, United States, and I'm from France. We live in Belgium, Brussels, but we are confined in France.
Aideen, hello.
Hi, my name is Aideen. I run the Circus High School at Circus Arcade, but I'm also still a freelance performer and I run my own company and make work.
Thank you. Jonathan. Hello.
Yep, hello, my name is Jonathan Priest. I was a teacher in Sweden for many years. I'm now a teacher in the UK, Bristol Circus Media, and I teach on the BA and on the MA in directing circus.
Great, and over to Lena.
Hi, sorry, you caught me there trying to fob my daughter off to grandmothers doing virtual teaching. I am Lena. I'm Joint Artistic Director from Mimbra. We produce circus performances. We also run a youth program.
Thank you. Axel. Hi, Axel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Axel. I'm an independent producer. I'm currently working with circus companies like Genji Juggling and Nikki and Jelly, and also currently producer for Manchester International Festival.
Thank you. And Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Kempster. Actually, that says it on the thing. I'm a choreographer, a dancer, performer, and currently trying to deliver some online classes for Trinity Lavan via Zoom. And I came to circus through working with Upswing last year in Catch Me. Nice to see you all.
Thank you. Over to Shayna.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Shayna Brandel. I'm an aerialist and circus performer and co-director of Pirates of the Caribbean. Hi.
Thank you. And Daniela. Hi, Daniela.
Hi, everyone. I'm Daniela. I'm the artistic director of Scarabeo's Aerial Theatre. We work with aerial productions and participation projects.
Thank you. Emily.
Hello, I'm Emily. I'm in Scotland. I'm a circus performer.
Hello. Last two, Eloise. Hello. Oh. Oh, you're muted, Eloise. Hold on a sec. Oh, try again.
Hi, is it working?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, I'm Eloise Edwards. I'm a Manchester-based performer. I study dance and train in circus, and that's why I'm here.
Great. And finally, Bex. Hi, Bex.
Hi everybody, my name is Bex Anson. I'm based up in Glasgow. I run Megahertz Scenography, which is a company that focuses on movement and digital worlds, but in a physical space. And I'm also an associate director, performance director with Baseline Circus.
Thank you. That's everyone. Back to you.
Right, fantastic. So it would be great if I could get maybe Mark to talk first, seeing as you've had your coffee.
Okay. Yeah, so my current preoccupation is how we make work, good quality work for the camera that we can share. It seems really obvious that at the moment we are a long way away from being able to congregate together to share experience of performance. So how do we substitute that? What we've seen is lots of people digging into their archive, things like Netflix or the Gandinis or Spy Monkey, who've been busy putting their back catalogue online, which is great to be able to watch these shows. But most of these shows have been documented as opposed to made for the camera. So what we see is we just see the documentation of a live show. And for me, this does not have the same quality as a work that's made for the camera, where the performers are addressing the camera as opposed to the performers addressing the audience. My question is, what can we do now? How can we bring some element of liveness, of contact? How can we break the fourth wall in a digital manner? Yeah.
Unmute, there we go. Also working around performance for the screen, maybe Summer and Raphael, you'd like to jump in here as well.
Before starting to answer the question asked by Mark, or help to answer that question or speak about it, I'd like just to make quickly a point. First of all, like Vicky said, digital circus should not be here to replace live circus. I think it's clear for everybody, but it's just another place of expressing ourselves, just like there is the big talk, the theater, the street, the screen being just another one of them. Then concerning the digital circus, I think it's very important before we dive into it to understand a little bit all the different forms it can take. This is different to do digital circus in order to promote a show, so a trailer or teaser, etc. This is different to do a show captation. I believe what Marx was more talking about. So a live performance that is filmed. It's also different from a short movie or long movie, meaning a creation made specifically for the screen. And within this category, there is two different kinds, I believe, which one is to adapt something that already exists, to adapt it, to put it, for example, we take a show that already exists and we perform it in another place, in a factory, in a field, etc., etc. And then it's also different to create something specifically for the screen. So writing with the tools of screenplay writing, of storyboarding, writing some circus piece specifically for the screen. And then of course there's other categories like online teaching. I think Joe is going to speak more about that. But all of these different categories have different specificity and different ways to make it good of good quality. So,
but most important would be that for us, we believe that quality lies also in the knowledge of the two art forms, the knowledge of circus and the knowledge of cinema, and then being able to use the two at their best in order to make the video. So
how they complete one another. And sorry, I'm very excited because for us it's a big subject, and we talk all the time about it. But I'd be interested in diving more into how do we create something specifically for the screen. But I believe the subject raised by Mark is more how do we do something that is live on the screen. I didn't answer at all the question, but I think
we did a little.
A little bit.
The two, it takes the two.
Yeah, I think it's not immediately about answering all the questions. I think we're all gonna get into it. So there is a topic around creating circus for the screen, but when we're talking about the digital space, and today we're really focusing on performance rather than learning and education. We're really focusing on the performance aspect. When we're thinking about the digital space, it's not just about work on the screen. Donna, I'd love to bring you in at this point.
Great, brilliant. Thanks, Vicky. Nice to see everyone. I'm just going to say a little bit about a project that I worked on with Vicky and with some other circus performers called XR Circus, and XR meaning mixed realities, not Extinction Rebellion, but mixed realities. So that's very much around the liveness, but also about how digital technologies can, I suppose, augment and enhance that. That was very much the sort of approach that we were taking, and also like the fact that these are more sort of blended opportunities now. So that was quite an interesting sort of inquiry at the heart of it. So I'd say that the two sort of key things, the two key sort of questions or interests that are sort of golden threads that go through all my work. I worked at ZAP for very, very many years as a producer, producing lots of work in outdoor spaces, lots of work with circus as well. And the things I was really interested in is the fact that I think the most interesting ideas come from the margins, you know, from marginal artists, from artists that are in there, the freelancers, the practitioners that are coming up with really ideas. And obviously in tech, they're often the ones that are most excluded because it's expensive, it's complicated, all that sort of stuff. And so XR Circus came from that sort of point, that foundation, but really trying to look at some of the critical discussions about tech, digital tech, and immersive tech in particular, and some of the challenges that they were identifying. And that was things around the access, the diversity, you know, the fact that it does tend to be a very particular sort of person that was engaging with the technology. You'd go into some of these workspaces and it would be like, you know, an estate agent's, you know, annual conference, and but then, you know, all motivated about where is the innovation, you know, where is the innovation? It's like, for me, it felt like the wrong people were in the room. And then there was also a discussion about agency, you know, how do you give the person who's watching it a sense of agency? And I think actually that touches on that liveness thing, you know, that feeling of like, what could happen next? What, you know, that feeling of being somewhere special, feeling like you're there, and anything could happen. And I think circus, outdoor arts, you know, people who work in those spaces are masters at that, you know, that feeling of liveness, spontaneity, you know, something special. And so I thought that was a very interesting area to bring together. So what we did, in essence, what we did was we were interested in how you might shape a professional development program that brings together an equal space for creative technologists and practitioners, in this case circus practitioners, to learn from each other, to try out a whole set of different tools. So we played a bit with VR, with AR, but also with like motion controlled sensors, with haptic technologies and with immersive audio. To see how you could augment a live performance, and by doing so, like incorporate screens and create a more blended live digital experience. And then we showed that at the Brighton Festival in the Spiegel tent in 2018, because that performance was a really important part of it. And I think that's a really, if you want to have liveness, that heading towards a show day is a really good bit of practice. That was a real bit of lesson for us. And we're taking what we call the creative co-laboratory process forward, and we've just got some funding from the Arts Council to do a project called Digital Democracies, which is about carrying on these opportunities and this learning about how you bring really interesting artists, that the ones that are sort of, I would say, artists coming from the margins, not the mainstream artists, not the big MPOs, you know, how you can get those in the mix with the technology, get them to play with the technology, with the technologists, and create experiences for audiences. You know, that's what it's about, really. Oh, can I just say my provocation? Sorry, just finally on that. So what I'd be really interested to hear about from everyone is, have you had any new digital experience, cultural experiences in this lockdown period that you've just gone, wow, that was really interesting, but it's flawed? You know, where is the gap that you as artists could bring something to? I'd be really interested in hearing from you guys about that.
That is a fantastic provocation. Thank you so much. And that idea that you bring into the conversation around agency for the audience and the opportunities that we have with digital to engage with that. I'd love finally just to bring Shimana into the conversation. I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I don't know. Listening to Donna, to Mark, to Summer Hubbard, like I'm going, wow, this is exactly what I've been working with for 10 years. So I understand everything you're saying, and this morning I made a big mess of myself in front of big people, because I'm excited about this space, and I think this space is a brilliant space, and you're the best people to get into it and make it yours and turn it around. The digital is not something you don't know. The digital is within you, and it's at your reach, and you know how to make it work. You just need time. This is what I think we all need, to sit down and to play, to mess around, to be in each other's projects. Yesterday I participated in Susan's experiment, and I went in, even though I had ages of experience, I left it behind, and I became what Susan wanted me to do. And I became her puppet, and I went with it, and I went into her world, and it was a nice discovery, and I gained something new. So I think I'm not provoking, but I think what we think, as you said at the beginning, Vicky, is that everybody threw everything online, and everybody started doing everything online. But I think it was a nice game time, but now take stock, observe what everybody's doing, and start redefining your own language within this space. So this is what I have as what Vicky said. Mark was talking about create work specific for camera. And I can't remember your name, Summer Hubbard, Monsieur Français. I can't remember your name.
Double take, Cinematic Circus.
What's your name?
I'm Summer, and this is Raphael.
Raphael was talking about the need of creating specific work that is for the digital. And I think this is a beautiful place to work with. And we all have the tools to make that happen. And it's true, it's identifying your need and how you want to develop it and how to create it. Now, I've been doing this for a long time, and I do workshops in all this. I'm not promoting myself. But a lot of my work that I do in the workshops is to extrapolate the need of the artist and how do you use the medium you're working with. And it's like choreographing. I call it sensography. I don't call it choreography. I call it sensography because it's touching the senses that you want to express. Now, within the digital, you don't have only the camera. You have all the multi-dimensions. And you have all the thinking. As a choreographer, you need to think a multitude. As a performer, you need to think a multitude. So from the inset of the work, you need to, there's a lot of technical words that I don't want to use now, but you need to discover the multitudes of you, and when is the right timing for all of them to be used. So I'm going to go to Donna. I'm trying to capture what everybody said. Donna, you were working with VR, with AR, with multiple realities, virtual realities, and these are beautiful places to go in, and we have a lot of potential, and you're right in saying we don't have the finances to finance that. And the reality of the matter, what I have experienced in the last 2 years, because I've been working a lot with VR, is that the artists are amazing at creating ideas. The technologists are amazing at making ideas, but there isn't the space for both of them to collaborate and nurture each other. And this goes into Summer's words, because Summer was saying it's about connecting the two together. The discourse I'm having at the moment with the technologists, scientists, and artists I'm working with, and I'm one of them, is how do we divert this language into becoming a new language for all of us, where we all can really collaborate. Technologists, scientists, or whatever medium you want to work with. I work with science and technology, so whatever you're working with. So it's redefining or shifting the practice for the medium we're working with. I don't because you have too many. I'm not going to throw mine.
I'm going to unmute myself. So we've got a few things on the table there, and I think the conversation will go where we need it to go. Does anybody have anything that they want to add to what has already been said, or a question that they want to put forwards? Yeah, Susan first, and then Jonathan.
It's just it's something that I've been thinking a lot about, which is something that I think needs to just be thrown out there, which is that we are, those of us who exist in the physical, practical world, are missing the positive brain hormones that come from physical contact with the real world. And there's a TV show on that's getting lots of good press. It's not about whether it's any good or not, but there are some very intimate sex scenes in it that really do transmit something very physical and very visceral. But that is often missing from the digital, something that makes us feel something physical, emotional, that doesn't keep us in a sort of, and just from my experience teaching on Zoom, there's a kind of adrenaline, but without the dopamine, without the other hormones that actually balance that out. So we end up feeling kind of exhausted and jaded rather than having had a fulfilling experience. So it's just something I want to throw out there, because it's sort of relevant, but sort of not, but it's something to put out there because I think we're missing that. And then just, yeah, I'd like to know a little bit more about the complexities of these digital realms and how they can be made accessible.
So jump to Jonathan. There we go.
I think I've done it. Yeah, I mean, I think it is a very exciting moment. I think that's definitely true. First, I want to say thank you, by the way, for organising this. So that's the first thing, and for allowing us all to meet here. I think from my perspective, I think this is we're talking about this moment as being almost, well, not past, but we're talking about there's a moment of suspension here where everybody's wondering what to do now. I'm detached from my usual apparatus or my usual space. That's one thing. And I think that there's two things I want to say about that, which are, this is a moment for me, or conceptually anyway, which we're all kind of accustomed to as circus artists, in the sense that it's a moment of suspension. So I think, within the weightless moment that we all know about, at the top of you throw a ball and at the top there's a moment of suspension, or in fact in an upswing, you could say like that. There's a moment of suspension. So I think in that sense, we all know the potentiality that exists within that moment of lift. And I think we're kind of experiencing that, and the excitement that we feel I don't want to say it's like a circus sensibility, but it feels a little bit like when there's a that we all kind of go like, what could we do in this? You know, what's possible within there. So that's one thing I want to say. The other thing is that this, you know, very much this is the original circus situation anyway, I think, because that, you know, you have an excess of energy and you have limited resources. So I mean, that's always been the original situation, you know, like I'm full of this desire to do things and to sort of transgress slightly the use of the objects that surround me. And I think that's a situation that maybe relates to lockdown or quarantine as well. So I think the energy is there. My perspective coming towards this is very much, I'm sorry, I didn't get the name of the last person who spoke. Is it Jumana?
Jumana.
Yes, okay, brilliant. I just wanted to sort of reiterate the excitement there about research. My doctoral research or my PhD is in artistic research to do with circus, and there are tactics within artistic research which I think apply here to this new moment of suspension, which are, and one of them is very much to do with transposition, because we're all trying to figure out how to transpose what our expertise is into new spaces, whether that be the domestic living room that we're stuck in, or whether it be now we're talking about transposing it into film. And I think the tactics of transposition, you know, are complicated, but I mean, I think that's essentially what we're doing. But I think one thing that I've got a lot of questions, basically. I tried to write like a question, and then I wrote 3, and now I'm up to 10. So I'm not going to bore you with those, but I might put them in the chat or something. But I think that in this moment of trying to transpose, we have to allow what Jumana is talking about, which is this research possibility. And I think there's, you know, we can rush to recreate all of the things that we are used to in the original space, but we need to kind of be ready to become accustomed to abandoning those things in a way and just be artists in a new space, on a new alien landscape, on a new territory that we don't quite yet grasp. And I think that's very much something that I'm excited about, and I'm happy about. Very quickly, I just wanted to say about transposition. There are 2 ways that you can do that. You could transpose something into a new register and leave it transposed, and therefore I have a new practice. You know, I could do dance as writing, and therefore I become a writer, and I write only as a dancer could write, maybe. Or I could transpose my dancing into writing, or my circus into film, in order to learn something new about my practice as a circus artist when I go back to the original practice. And I think both of those possibilities are relevant at this particular moment. Yeah, that's kind of all for me.
Okay, we had a question from a comment from Aideen, and Jonathan, please do put your questions in the chat. Shall I unmute you?
I can do it, I think. I'll be really quick. I just got spontaneously inspired by what Susan was saying about sensory activation in terms of the liveness, and ties into a little bit what Mark was saying, because I've been very inspired since the last meeting that we had. And then of course, because all of these things always end up happening at the same time, and you've probably all seen the different things, like there is actually already an operating drive-through strip club in Oregon, which is functioning very well. And there's also like drive-in concerts happening in Aarhus in Denmark. But basically what I was thinking about the sensory thing, this just right now, is that yesterday they have reposted it online. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the theatre piece, The Encounter by Complicité with Simon McBurney. And I was thinking about this sensory thing that Susan was talking about, because binaural sound, one of the things that we should not forget when we're talking about film as a visual medium, and it ties into this idea of accessibility and people with disabilities, is the fact that sound is incredibly powerful. And for example, the way they use binaural sound in that piece is incredible. It's mind-blowing, because you actually feel like, he does a test at the beginning where you have your headphones on and you actually feel like he's breathing on the back of your neck. Your brain tells you he's there, and you feel hot breath in the back of your neck. So I just wanted to say that for anybody who hasn't looked into it, binaural sound is like, there's so many different things within cinema that can be really attacked, you know. Anyway, that's it basically for now. Okay, bye.
Thank you. So there are these, oh, hang on. Shall I go over to Summer and Raphael?
I would like to rebound on what Jonathan said, because we found ourselves to very agree what he said, and this is something I wanted to come later on. So when he says transposing, and it takes a moment to identify what circus is for you, and I don't have the sorry. I won't try to say what circus is in general. I'm just going to say what it is for me, and it's a mix of different things. Being I'm not to it. No, being circus for me is a crossroad between different arts. It's also the fact that it has prowess. It's also the fact that it's live, and you have also the phenomenon of the catharsis, and also very specific the approach of the object. And this is the one I want to more and emphasize. So just a little note. For us, in our practice of screen circus, we voluntarily forget the fact that it's going to be live. We accept the fact that it won't be live, but for us, still, it's still going to be circus. So it raises another question: is, if you take off the parameter of liveness, is it still circus? But that's another subject. For me, I already answered. For us, yes, it is still circus, even if it's not live. Talking about the object, we started with Circus, Summer and me, and in circus, we approach every apparatus and every object a little bit the same. And it's very simply, it's like, here's a pole that it's a straight pole. What can you do on it? Okay, I can climb up, I can turn around it, I can go down. Here's a partner. How can I carry you? How can you jump on me? How can I throw you? So our approach of movie, it's a little similar. It's very simple. Here's a camera. What can we do with it? And it's very overwhelming for me when we speak about the 360 thing. How did you call it? The VR thing, and then all this camera and all this technology. I like it, but first I'd like to start very simply with simple protocols. Here's the possibility that you can slow down a movement. What can I do with that? So what I'm trying to say is that we approach the video just like if it was another apparatus. I can do a jump cut. What can I do with it? And we approach it like circus artists. Before adding a bunch of stuff, we're first gonna research very simply on one protocol. I give a more specific example of what I'm saying. The video, you can change speed. We're gonna create, knowing that, a piece specifically for the video where we're gonna dance around one another. Except that Summer, she's gonna voluntarily move in extra slow motion. She's gonna move very slow. And me, I'm gonna move in normal speed. So Summer and me, we're gonna do a duo, a floor acro duo, or end-to-end duo, or dance duo, where she moves very slow and me very fast, because we know that after we have the possibility to accelerate the video. Then Summer becomes in a normal speed, and then me, I'm super speedy, like a Dragon Ball Z or Ninja. What I'm trying to say is identifying those protocols, the simplest one, and take them as apparatus. I'm not saying this is the way it should be done or whatever. It's just our research. And a last thing, when you talk about circus, there is the adaptation to different spaces. Circus in a theater is different than circus in a big top, which is different than circus in the street. So what is this new space we can express ourselves in, and what are its specificities. I believe that to try to do big top circus in the screen, I think it's a waste of time, because there's no better big top circus than in a big top.
Concur. So we've got a few comments lined up. What's going to happen as we go through the comments is the conversation might shift. So if you feel like your point is going to be lost, please put it in the chat, because it means that it's there and then we can come back to it. Okay, so I'm going to go, Shamana, you had something. B, you put your hands up, and then Jonathan, and then Bex. Excellent, so we'll go in that order. So Shamana.
Answering Rafael, and I think Donna wanted to say something. I'm sorry, I think I jumped the queue. Am I right? Because it was Donna that wanted to say something. Sorry.
No, it's fine. All I was going to say was I think everyone's focused on, I mentioned VR so quickly, and actually we didn't use any VR. It was mostly around audio, immersive, motion, sensor, physical space. So audio is a really big part of what we're doing. And the whole project was about designing that space to create a collaborative experience for technologists and circus practitioners, like you were saying, Raphael, where all practitioners brought their expertise but felt that that was all valued equally. That's for me, that's the secret. But thank you so much, Nimano. I appreciate you saying that.
I have a different approach, Rafael, because the reason why I did all the work, or I'm still doing the work, because I have a lot of curiosities as a mover, as a dancer, or as a choreographer, and on the language that I want to keep on developing. So that's my drive. And for me, my interest is collaborating with the digital, and this gives a different angle to the project or to the work I'm doing. And even though I know what a camera can do, I believe that the most important thing is, I will call it how I call it in Spanish, it's el grito. It's your urge to create, this urge of creation of what you want to create, then you'll know how to use the medium you're using. So this is the most, because at the end of the day, you are you, and your work is amazing because it's your story. It's not because of the medium, or it's because of you, and people want to see you. So this is the most important thing. And I think it's understanding your personal energies, but as well the digital energies. Like sound is one, visual is one, gravity, gosh, gravity is so important in digital. And it's one of the biggest parts I work on in the digital, because it is a power in itself. So I just wanted to just bring these elements to it. The other thing that I wanted to say is that the digital, the digital is frustrating. Working with VR is frustrating. It's because we wanted to do beyond what it could do. We don't want it to stay where it is. We want it to move with us. We wanted to do further. Like last year, I was working with Oculus Quest, and I had to break all the rules in Oculus Quest so I can get what I wanted to get. So it's understanding where are the limits. If you want to break them, you can break them. But first, it's your story.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to B.
Yeah, I just wanted to layer on in this idea of the sensory and what Adine was saying about sound. I want to add on the idea of space, especially in terms of some words which have been used, which is access and agency. I think we need to distinguish between what's in the previous session. I think Raphael and Samuel talked about creating a circus genre within the cinema industry, and then the use of digital in live performance, as Jamana is talking about, and then recording a video that has got circus, because we've got beautiful examples of dance for the screen. So to me, the main question is, that experience of space that in live performance is so connected to the ritual, and it gives the audience the agency of the personal experience. When we are talking about something which is created for the screen, what is the relationship that we are looking at for the audience in terms of experiencing the space, is receiving the experience through. And I just wanted to finish by saying there were two words as well that struck me from the previous session, which I think are quite connected, about bringing down to the core of the live performance or a skill, which is the idea of identity beyond technique. So what is the identity of the realm we're talking about? And then a digital tool is an access tool that can become creative. But space, yeah, thank you.
Getting used to unmuting myself. Okay, so next, Jonathan, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I sort of kind of agree with Raphael a little bit there, in the sense that I think it's important what you call protocol. You know, you establish what is the protocol that you're going to use, and I think that's very important. I mean, I'm coming from this, I'm still kind of talking about transposition as a tactic from artistic research, and I think it is relevant. But I think the way that I understand that idea of protocol is that you have to be, when you transpose one thing from one register to another unfamiliar register, you have to be clear about the identity that you're transposing. And I think that's the idea that you were mentioning there of protocol. Like, what is it that we're actually doing here? You know, what is the actual element that we're trying to make work in this new register? And I think that's a really important thing. The other important thing is not to get stuck in the idea, in the spirit of research, you're naming something, but name it playfully. You know, you name the thing that you're trying to transpose, but give it a name, knowing that the name probably won't capture that thing. Name it for 24 hours and research with that and see what happens. And I think that's a useful tactic. I like the idea of what you were talking about moving slow and moving fast, because that shows that the camera can create its own restrictions on the body. It can give challenges to the body, the way that the camera is framing the image or the protocol, the particular thing that you're working on, can create new challenges, which in a way only circus artists can answer in the way that circus artists answer those challenges. So I think that's a really important element of what you were talking about, Raphael, that the idea of a bodily challenge that comes out of an idea of filming circus in itself. Because I think the one thing that I have a question here is if we embrace the making of cinematic tricks, how do we still keep the audience aware of the logic of restriction against which the circus body is pushing? Like, how does that, something like gravity, how is that still present in the filming? How is that restriction, which we can aesthetically identify with, how is that present when film can do anything? I suppose that's my question. Sorry, I talked too much. You're still muted, I think.
Almost got it. So I think Mark had something to say to that, and I'll come back to you in a moment, Mark. But first we had comments from Bex and Lena, and then I'll come to you.
Hey, yeah, I was just picking up on this idea of platforms and collaboration. And because, you know, this idea of suspension, we're not quite sure how long we're going to be in this space for, and to learn kind of filmmaking, editing, to be able to afford the computer programs, to have the right mics. I mean, it's something you work with for a long time and build up gradually. And I think it's hard to expect to be able to create something of, you know, really quite good quality. Maybe you can film it, that's fine. It's in terms of like editing and taking it to the final product. So I'm quite interested to know how we can collaborate across art forms and how we connect with those people who are video editors, say, I don't know, or who are sound designers, or maybe even music video. We recently, to kind of go alongside a project, Kid X, a show that I've worked on, which is for teenagers and has got kind of music very much driving it. we created a music video where we had dance and circus in that video. And it was a great way that was almost like a legacy project in terms of getting people excited about what the show is, and also taking circus and dance kind of to more people, to younger people, because that is their platform, is a lot of times is watching music videos. And then also I was thinking there about kind of, you know, dance on screen. It's been going for many, many years now. And it would be great that circus on screen started to get that platform. Even curating a film screening that has been made for like what Mark was saying, and, you know, which has been filmed for screen. It's so different filming a show, but film for screen. So collecting that, circulating that, you know, and maybe when this is all over, we could then actually have circus on screen festivals, because that's really interesting as well. And then I just wanted to say that editing is choreography to me, and, you know, it's so yeah, how can we collaborate with platforms that already exist, basically, and other people's skills?
Fantastic. I'm gonna be a bit cheeky and jump to, is Donna still there?
I think she's just left.
Donna had something to add, but she's just left. I'm so sorry. Okay, we'll continue on our trajectory. Raphael, I'm going to come to you after Mark. I see the fits of agreement happening there. We're going to go to Lena next, then Mark, then Raphael and Summer.
Hi, yeah, like everyone else, I'm like, wow, there's loads of really interesting things I'd love to respond to, but there's one main thing I would like to add as a provocation, really. What somebody said very early on about the difference as a performer or a creator or a teacher to be live or do it on screen. We've been doing a lot of online Zoom classes, YouTube, all of that, and I really agree. I feel so exhausted after. And that's something quite interesting to note, how different it is in terms of the energy that you give and what you get back. It's really hard. I really, really miss that live experience, even though, you know, it's amazing that we can do it digitally. The provocation I wanted to put in was just a thing about skills, you know, seeing that skills is such a big thing of circus, and how different skills are perceived when they are digital. And if I do a handstand in the park next to some kids, they'll be like, wow, even if that's a really scrappy handstand. And if I do a handstand on the video, it has to be so good for people to be impressed by it. You know, those same kids would be like, yeah, whatever, if they would see that on YouTube. Or in any sort of digital context, really. So, and this is a conversation I had with performers already before last year, about the fact that we used to see, like, you know, online we can see the best skills ever. You can see the world best BMX artist or handstand or whatever. So we just have to you know, to be impressed by the skill, they need so much more. Or like what people are saying, it's about how can we show them in a different way? Because actually, if we then do the handstand, but there's a close-up of how much the muscles in the forearms are working, suddenly that gives the audience a different perspective. Or if it's the backstory of it, or like someone was saying, it's still about the performer. Like, what is it that is about you and your story of doing that handstand? If that's the backstory to the training, or just your personality coming out, or just how you frame it, that it's still very much about what we can still do is about that, you know, those small stories that we tell through our work. But I think we just have to be aware of that the skills are perceived differently when they're online. And just on a super quick note on the thing about like learning to do editing yourself or not, there are some super simple apps, very cheap or free, and the ones we're using is Power Director, which is free, or the like pro version is like, I don't know, £10 for like 3 months. There's also Adobe Rush, which is very, very easy and intuitive to use. And I very much agree as a choreographer, for me to try the idea online with like really scrappy editing before discussing the project with a filmmaker we work with, that really helps me as a choreographer to understand what can come out of it. So it's worth to think of like learning a really, really simple video app, even though it's going to look horrendous, as a way for you to learn. But you don't need to go and become an expert in actual film editing.
All right, I'm gonna jump to an expert in film editing, Mark.
Yeah, I get to laugh about that. Thank you. So some of the things which are really interesting come up from our conversation that I'd like to talk about. Just picking up on something that Jonathan was just saying about being faithful to circus. And as I said last week, so I'm not going to dwell too much on this, that for me, this is one of the really important things, that circus is real, as Reg Bolton said, it's not about illusion, that the circus performer really is doing that thing in front of you. And I'm wary about using digital art, filmmaking, whatever, to take away from that, to lose that sense of reality, which for me, as I say, is the unique thing about circus. There is no suspension of disbelief. And so as a filmmaker, as a digital artist, I don't want to mess with that. I just want to talk about some of the things which I made about trying to stay faithful to circus, you know, and yet using the things that you can do with, and really simple stuff. So I put in the chat, I put a link to a film that that John-Paul Zaccarini and Matilda Laser and I made, one of a series of films that we made about distorting time. And we used exactly the method that Raphael was talking about one person moving slowly, one person moving in normal speed, and then speeding up so the person who's moving very slowly becomes the one in normal speed and the other person is in hyperdrive. I put one link on the chat and I'll put a link to the other projects that we did using this. And for us it was this challenge about how we don't use post-production tricks, not too many anyhow, how we can mess with time but stay true to circus. Okay, and then that became a bit of a theme for some of the next work which I did, was about changing the perspective. How do we use the camera to change what we see? And this was very much informed by my work as a teacher, where I would see things, as a circus teacher, where I would see things that up close that the audience is too distant to see. So I became obsessed with filming the fingers of handstand artists, just the little bits that they do. Those tiny little movements that keep them in balance that are too small for the audience to see because we're too distant. So trying to really film stuff close up, and Kate, this is just such simple stuff that you can do with your students, you know, bringing the camera closer. Filming things from above. So I did a lot of work, a bit of work with the Gandinis, a bit of work on my own about putting the camera above, about looking down on stuff, because normally you don't get a chance to do that. You know, normally we're, you know, as the light. So I'm talking about how what filmmaking could bring to circus, how we change perspective. So putting the camera above, looking down, putting the camera below, you know, looking up at a performer. We did some work with Natalie, Record, balance artist who I work with a lot, about seeing what does handstands look like from below. And then, yeah, so those things are really, you know, just change the viewpoint, changing the speed, and as Lena was saying, Adobe Rush is a really easy to use program that lets you do that, just change the speed of stuff. I did a lot of work, a film, and again, I'll put links in this, about filming stuff really close and in really slow motion. So we got to see, again, these are the things that the audience doesn't see. So I, again, became obsessed. I'm not obsessive at all, but I did become obsessed with the marks that get left on the body when a rope artist has wrapped the rope around themselves and then the rope comes off, and you see for a moment the pattern of the rope on the body. So I became obsessed with this, about how the catch and the juggling object actually distorts the hand, this kind of stuff. So yeah, quite excited about that. And again, I felt that I was still being true to circus. All we were seeing was the detail. I wasn't, you know, there's a film, not a film, it is a film, but it's part of a stage show from Philippe de Coufflet called Shazam, and he used this technique in two of his shows, in Shazam and in Abracadabra, where he filmed people from above doing tricks, you know, like it's on YouTube. Again, I'll put the link, but it's fake somehow. we've seen this. Lots of people are doing these stop motion videos in their bedroom of artistic bicycles or jugglers or something. But somehow it's not real to me. It's not doing that. So just a couple more things to talk about in terms of how we integrate visual art, the digital art, and the circus. So I work on the show with Natalie Rackert, and it's about, as Jonathan was saying, it's about the time and about having the time to experiment. So Natalie and I were very lucky, and we had a lot of funding just to play and play and play, and to create propositions for each other. You know, Natalie going, well, how can you turn me into a digital avatar? And me going, well, how can I look at your little finger when you're doing the one-arm handstand and things? And it became a real granular process, but it is about time, you know, just about, which is something which we have at the moment, but don't generally have. So it does feel very much like playtime. And Natalie and I right now, she's in the studio next door, we're working on ASMR. So using the binaural stuff and some of the imagery, my close-up circus imagery, which is abstract, you know, the really close-up images of the body, of the hands and of the arms, the muscles moving, that if you don't know what it is, it becomes an abstract thing. So putting together ASMR, Natalie's poetry and speaking along with this kind of abstract filmmaking. Yeah, so I think that's probably what I wanted to talk about. But yeah, just that some of my techniques are just so simple, you know, but again, just trying to stay true to circus.
Thank you, Mark. I'm really excited about the ASMR project.
Yeah, I'll send you all the link.
I'm going to go to Raphael, then we had Aideen. So we're stacking up comments.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm very, very happy about everything that was said, and very excited that we are not the only ones to ask ourselves this question in our small caravan. It's very exciting to see that other people have them. I'd like to answer a vast question, which is that was in a way raised by Lina, by Jonathan, and a little bit by Mark too, which is the authenticity of circus, what Mark called true to circus. But first, I'm gonna start with the tricks, what Jonathan called the prouesse, the rules of gravity. I'd just like to start by asking a little question. Let's say COVID-19 becomes very powerful and we need to change planet. We need to jump into spaceships and we all need to go live on the moon. Is it the end of circus because the rules of gravity are different? Is it the end of acrobatics because suddenly I can jump 3 meters higher? I believe it's not. The rule of the normality of the live performance and to apply those rules into digital, I believe it's a mistake, right, because the rules are just different. And being a circus artist, being an acrobat in Greek, I believe means walking on the edge. It doesn't mean walking on the edge of the live performance rules. It means walking on the edge, any rules.
Within circus, there's fear and it shouldn't lead.
So yeah. So as an acrobat, what I'm trying to do is to take the rules that are given to me in this world is the rules of gravity, of time, of flight, of my body, what it can do. I'm trying to take those rules and, pardon me for my French,
easy. There could be kiddies.
and to F them up. I'm trying to free myself from all these rules, meaning doing digital circus is not trying to apply the rules of one more time live performance. It's acknowledging what are these new rules, what is this new world, and how do I play with it? So I give an example. We just finished the editing of a video clip that is going to be published very soon on social platform, where we played with a floor acrobats, and we put a big portic of 12-meter long, 9-meter high in the middle of the forest. And we suspended the guy, accepting the fact that with my program, I can erase the cable. Like, the dude was completely flying, Tigre Dragon style. That became my apparatus. That became his apparatus. And the rules were just different. Now you can dance like you do. Now you can jump, except that you can jump 5-meter high. It is not cheating circus, because circus is not confined into a certain set of rules. I express myself differently. It would make no sense to create a show which is for 360 public in a theater. Why? Because there's no public around. You just change the rules and you make it different. Concerning being true to circus and no disbelief, what do you do, Mark, about swinging trapeze? So a girl alone on a swinging trapeze with a lunge. She has a lunge. She can fall. She cannot kill herself. Is it still circus? I believe it is. She just gonna find whatever she can do within the new sets of rules. And it's exactly the same with digital circus. When you do a close-up, you already, pardon me, I just mean to provoke. When you do a zoom, you already use a disbelief concern what is normally being a spectator of a live performance, because when you watch a show live, you cannot zoom except if you take binoculars. I've never seen nobody with no binoculars. But what I'm saying is, yeah, I think I said it. So the skills, to answer Lina, the skills, they become different. We need to think deeper. The skills become the way of filming, the way of editing, mixed up with what the body of an acrobat can do, and mainly mixed up with what the mind of a circus artist can do. It's very important what you say, staying faithful to circus, and it's very important to ask ourselves, what does it mean? What does it mean? What circus mean? What are the different parameters? Is it still circus if I take off one of the parameters? If I take off two? If I just stay faithful to one of them?
And I think that circus limits itself dramatically if we walk in fear that the digital circus will inevitably erase the live circus.
It will not.
All these other sectors are continuing to grow and prosper during these times, and I think circus just needs to also catch on that bandwagon a bit, and to know that it's just another tool, it's another outlet for circus to prosper, and not that it will eliminate something, but just that it's one more thing to reinforce our art.
It's about playing with the rules that are given to you. So when you accept that, and the last thing concerning live performance, a question. You have two types of different ways to listen to music. The first one is live, you go to a concert, and the second one is an album recorded. Is it still music? Thanks.
In the comments, we will leave a link to some of our work so that you all can have an idea of some of the stuff that we're doing and how we film and how we edit and how we put this feeling to our videos.
Concerning that, I have to say that we've been mainly experimenting this like 3 years, and due to the fact that we need to pay bills, we've been doing many promotional material for other circus artists, meaning it's a completely different work to understand what's the essence of a show and trying to put it back in 1 minute 30 to 2 minutes. But mainly what we want to do is short movies, long feature movies, circus shows that are not meant to be performed live, but that are meant to be written, filmed, and projected. That's it.
Wow, I feel like I just need to take a moment to digest all that. Really, really fantastic input. Aideen, you had your hand up a while ago. Do you still want to share your comment?
I think so, yeah. I think it's relevant. It might be a bit of a devil's advocate moment, but so in some ways I was kind of thinking, okay, so we're discussing things which is talking about how are the usual restrictions visible, the kind of the standard or the kind of level of video editing and its attachment to privilege in terms of access to being able to edit, or the skills and everything like this. I don't think that those two things are in conflict with each other in any way, because I just think it's basically two different ways that the art form can be expressed. Because in some senses, using the low tech doesn't make any difference. In fact, it can be more powerful because it shows more clearly the restrictions. And then I just had this moment where I just thought, do we even need to have anyone trained to be a circus artist if we have the access to video editing? It's because we can suspend all disbelief, and we don't need anyone to be able to do a handstand to be able to make them do a handstand on screen. Which doesn't mean that we would be ending circus, but maybe circus becomes even more available to everybody and every shape. I don't know, that wasn't a thing that I think is possible that it might happen, but it just suddenly occurred to me. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Jonathan, your hand shot straight up in the air, and
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a really interesting point. Aideen, hi, by the way. And it's, yeah, I think that idea of, if the audience is, I think that's what my question is about. It's like, if the audience is unaware of the logic of restriction under which that body is operating, which protocols are in place, then I think you enter a kind of Jurassic Park moment where like anything is possible. You know, we can ride dinosaurs into the big top and I can stand on one finger. And I don't think that's useful, because I think then we enter a world where a sort of post-factism whereby anything is possible for anybody. And I think that's a neoliberal idea, which I'm not on board with. So I think that the idea of, you know, making it clear what those restrictions are within the filmmaking process. What are we working with? Like Raphael was saying, he was being clear that we have these poles, and the thing that I'm working with here is the capacity to make the cables invisible. Okay, then we know what the restriction is, we know what the area is of work, and we can see the beauty and the innovation and the acrobacy that's happening within that parameter. So I think that's the important thing, because I think, you know, you do enter a world, maybe one of the thoughts that people get excited about is, oh, I can do anything to anything. And I don't think it's like an orgy of like possibilities. But I mean, it's, you know, that I don't think that is useful to watch, if you see what I'm saying.
Jemana.
I think I'm gonna go back a little bit, and I think we are talking about two different subjects. We're talking about streaming, live audiences, and what we're offering to audiences, and pre-recorded material. They're completely different arenas, completely. And I think my song is about streaming and creating live to immediate audiences. This is where your dimensions change a lot. And it's a different vocabulary than the vocabulary that you're using about editing. And there's magic in there, and and there's a lot of magic in there, in the artist, in the designer, be it choreographer, circus designer, whatever skills this person has, and the team that you have around you, and the negotiation that you're creating with your audiences. This is completely different skill set than the skill set of a pre-recorded performance. And I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Alice.
Hi everyone, sorry I came in a bit late. I just wanted to, just came to me as you were saying, Jonathan, about, I guess, the kind of special effects and how that kind of takes away, you know, if anyone can do it, the kind of Jurassic Park concept. But I think that that's kind of what circus performers are. They train to be able to do things that seem impossible to kind of the outside world, and that's kind of part of the magic. And unless you are a circus performer watching a circus performer, you're often not aware of what has gone into that performance, the kind of level of training that has gone into it. And also I personally find, both in my teaching and my performing, that often the tricks that you find the hardest, no one notices them, they're not that interesting, and the tricks that are sort of the easiest are, you know, the classic kind of splits and the whatever it is, are the things that the audience thinks is extraordinary. So I just wanted to put that out there as a sort of, I don't know, in parallel to special effects. I don't know really what I'm trying to say, but it just came to me then that that's part of what we do as circus performers, is make things impossible look possible.
I'm going to go to Kate and then to Jonathan. Also, I'm going to say that we're coming close to the 1 o'clock mark. So maybe after Jonathan, it would be really good just to go around everybody and just get a final thought or a question that you're taking away, or something that you think actually needs to be brought into another one of these series of dialogues. So, Kate. Okay, we just need to unmute you. Yeah. There we go.
Sorry. So yeah, picking up on what Alice was saying about tricks, made me think of a couple of things. One was, I suppose, what the Circus for Film is doing. Is it aesthetic? Is it beautiful? Is that the intention, or is it about the tricks? And this goes back to, you know, loads of discussions about circus and what contemporary circus is, blah blah blah. But it also, after the last conversation we had, I reflected, because we were talking quite a lot about risk, and this conversation about that with the addition of film, you know, circus performers can do anything. And I watched Free Solo again recently, which is about the guy who climbs El Capitan without ropes. And I've seen it before, and I know he does it, but the whole way through I couldn't watch. And I don't know if that was about vertigo but it was exciting, and I was with him. And so I just wonder how we can capture that same sort of thrill using circus. Yeah, it was just that thought, really, that I think it is possible, but I don't know how.
Jonathan.
Yeah, sorry to. I feel a bit like I'm saying too much now, but just to answer what was said before about circus artists and the sort of magic and things like that. I think I don't know how to put this simply. I think that's my problem, but the idea of there being something that admits, like there's an area of restriction which we can kinesthetically identify with. And I sat in front of a circus performance. I know that you have the same body as me. I know that you're under the same non-negotiable force as me. And so I understand, even though it tacitly, unspokenly, on some level, I understand how difficult that must be. And I think that's what I'm referring to when I say that the logic of restriction under which the body is moving is clear. And I think if we keep that alive, you know, within film, working in film, if those set of restrictions, no matter what they are, they don't need to be physical restrictions, but if that logic is visible and perceivable to the watcher, to the spectator, then I think that there's something in there which relates to circus, I feel. And I'm not trying to define circus for anybody. I think there's two kinds of tricks. You know, there's the kind of trick that exposes the limits of a system and says this system could be redrawn now because we can now do this. Or there's the kind of a trick that conceals limits within the system. And it's like the difference between a magician who says, oh, you know, that's just a trick, and the magician who says, hey, that was real magic. You know, it's kind of like the difference between those two ways of talking about tricks. And I think that that's an important issue as we make that transposition of how we define what that magic is, because a film like Jurassic Park is a world that we are immersed in it as if it was real. And I don't think we're not trying to say that those things are real. It's a long, I could talk all day about that one. So I will stop now.
I'll just make a brief comment on that. I have a friend who works in film special effects with a company called D-Negative, and a while ago they moved away from using motion capture and went into pure animation. They scrapped that now because they're finding that people don't feel that it's real. So, you know, you have superheroes leaping up into the air. There was something about not using motion capture and having some relation to gravity that made people feel that the motion capture was failing in the films because it didn't have a quality of real for, you know, somebody walking through a wall. So I find that a really interesting conversation. I think we need to come to an end, otherwise we're going to be on Zoom all day, and nobody likes to be on Zoom all day. This has been a really brilliant conversation, and I know that I'm leaving with lots of questions and lots of things that I want to keep talking about. It'd be lovely to hear from you what that's brought up for. What that's brought up for you, because we need to think about what is the next dialogue that we need to have. Claire, do you mind going? Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Okay, your orders have changed a little, so I'm going to head straight over to B. Just unmute yourself, and if you want to, if you've got something to say.
Sorry, because I'm using a tablet, so I can't see everyone, and I know that when I go into the chat, I disappear. So sorry, I was kind of answering back. Yes, so I think for me, it's like again being very clear about. The digital environment being another artistic tool which can be used accordingly to our choices of aesthetics, whether or not it conveys the communication better for what we are creating. And then the other realm, which is again circus-based genre for a film. And as I said, I don't see that to be any sort of friction or clashes. If that's what you want to explore, there's plenty of tools and also examples which have been described as musicals that also can sort of feed into that conversation. What I wanted to throw as a provocation, which we talked again, there are some words which are used and they have different sort of meanings according to the context. Again, I want to sort of go back to the idea of access and just throw in a thought of how not just as an artistic tool, digital can be used in an intimate way to facilitate access to people with different sensorial needs. And so, like simple example of people who have got autism spectrum, their focus when they're watching something goes into different directions than the attention of a person that doesn't belong to that spectrum. So how can we actually use, for instance, the intimacy of a camera or the scope of the focus to facilitate that reading for people with those kind of different reading needs? And then just to answer, I know that Donna isn't here, but she asked the question, any new digital experiences? And I would change that word with more than experiences, lots of new digital challenges. Yes. Thank you. And thanks everyone for the inspiring conversations.
Thanks, B. I'll go over to Joe.
Hi everyone. Really interesting for me. I said the same last week. It's very inspiring to hear these conversations because I work with people at day one, really, of their circus journey and their growth. But what interests me is the language. So the language we use here and in these conversations is very different to the language in other conversations that I have. And I'm interested in how on people's circus journey from day one to day 1,000, how they become part of these conversations. it generally tends to be, from my observation of my work, you know, that their options, they go onto circus school to become a performer, and then it seems that there's wider opportunities that are available to them after that point, that they're like, oh, I could do this, I could do this, and I want to be part of this conversation. But there's a lot of skills and a lot of adults within our community that really want to be part of conversation, and they don't quite know how to get there. And what interests me is that they've got a lot of skill outside of circus, but circus is really something that they're interested in developing. How do we get them people to these conversations? And all of, so there's a lot of things that don't really give me one question. It inspires me, because I'm like, oh, okay, well, all of this is happening, and now I can try and find a language to translate this information to them, to try and bring them here or to bring them somewhere else. So that's just stuff. But thank you again, and thanks Vicky, and thanks everyone for sharing.
Thank you, Joe. I'm going to head down to Jonathan.
Hello. Yeah, I feel like I've said enough, but you know, thank you. Really, it was fantastic to join in, and I really appreciate this moment to be able to just talk about this subject. It's fascinating.
So Jonathan, there will be more spaces, and if you have a topic that you want to bring as well into this kind of dialogue, we're open for other people to suggest topics too. So thank you for joining us.
And to Lissy.
Hi, I don't have much to say. Thank you ever so much. It's been really interesting, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Lissy. Mark? Unmute.
Yes, this continues to be fascinating, continues to, you know, other people's viewpoints coming in as well from the worlds of outside circus and all, which is really interesting, because how do they see circus? Yeah, I think just one big provocation to finish with is that alongside all of this digital stuff that we've been talking about, how do we get work out there digitally, I've also been involved in a big conversation with people going, well, shit, we just need to return to the Middle Ages and be traveling players and just be in our portable stage, going from village to village green, and setting up outside and just doing the live show right there for the cash in the hat and moving on. Okay, and then one last thing is that Jonathan's PhD is online and makes for really fascinating and interesting reading. So I'd recommend that to people. It's on the Stockholm University of the Arts website, and it's a good read.
Jonathan, if you have the link, can you stick it in the chat and we can make sure it goes out?
Thank you, Mark. Alex, over to you.
Yeah, as everyone said, it's really inspiring and really kind of, I guess it brightens up your weekday, all of that, being able to listen and be in contact with so many different people in different places. I just wanted to really quickly talk about, I was involved in an online kind of aerial improvisation conference a couple of weekends ago with some people that I've worked with in Greece. And because someone sort of asked the question of has anyone done anything online and if it didn't work, and so I just wanted to just really quickly say that part of that was some people presenting live either work in progress or a kind of process, and everyone watching. And what I found really interesting about that is how weird it was being an audience member over Zoom, watching someone doing who's normally, we were all aerialists, so normally has equipment, didn't have any equipment, and there was a certain level of kind of feeling like a voyeur. There's some certain level of kind of feeling slightly sordid. So I guess my and also the other element is that the audience, if you're doing something live, they can be doing whatever they want on the other side of the screen, right? They could be doing their washing, or they could be checking their phone, or so kind of how do we deal with the live space and to kind of breach that a very strange gap, which is what we're all used to having, which is the energy of the audience. And in this case, everyone else was muted. So it is very uncomfortable for the performer being in that situation where they can't hear anything, but obviously it was necessary. But it was also very uncomfortable for us as the audience to watch them being so uncomfortable. So I guess I just wanted to put that out there as a kind of thing to think about.
Thank you, Alice.
That's really interesting. And I think there is one topic floating around about creating, how we keep creating at a distance. So thank you so much.
Okay, Bex and +1.
What we do is a reflection.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, my thinking is all about accessibility and audiences and communities, and you know, I'm quite interested in kind of harder to reach communities in general in the theatre, you know, how you get those people through the door, and you know, how do we sustain an excitement in what it is that we do in the performing arts, because people are just flooded with stuff all the time. I know personally what I've really been enjoying is like sneaking in, well, it's not a sneaking, it is voyeuristic, but that live, you know, famous people, watching them have a chat. And it could be about, like, they just talk about really normal rubbish stuff, but then you meet people like Jonesy D from Breaking Convention, who was chatting from a guy from Boy Blue, and it was dead interesting what they went into and talking about their festival. And you know, they went online, they curated something for the weekend there, and I watched that, and that felt really exciting because that was a Saturday night, and I was like, right, 7 p.m, I'm going to tune in the diary. And then so it's about, like, you know, oh, you know, that, what's it called, that thing, there was something from the National Theatre, I was like, oh, that looks good, I'll watch that, put that in. And then I've also been thinking about just accessibility, and like all these kids that I work with, I do a lot of kind of youth work, you know, they haven't got any money to top up the mobile phone, you know, how can they stream or watch anything? So, you know, being able to just like support them through this. When I have done some live sessions, you know, it's, what's great is that kind of dialogue you can have with the audience, people chatting to you, so it's almost like immediate reflective dialogue, so you can go off in tangents, or people can tell you if they do enjoy something, and that's quite a buzz, as if you're needing that as a performer, you know. And then last thing I wanted to just say is, one thing that's worked amazing for us is something called cosmic yoga. So this woman tells a story through and does yoga, so she does like Star Wars and yoga for kids with this virtual background, and it is trippy as hell, but it's storytelling and it's movement. And for my child who's 4 and a lot of her friends up to about 8 years old, it has been really engaging. And this, I was like, that's super interesting, that combination of things. And one last provocation is the window. Could it be we do performances in our windows in our houses? And, or what about the, you know, you see those like superhero people, like, you know, people on the front line getting dressed up, and you might see, okay, everybody at 8 o'clock, everybody look out the windows, and there's a parade of 3 circus performers at a distance, you know, weird stuff. I don't know.
It feels like we're going back to the travelling troops. That's a thing that's going to happen.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you, Bex.
Okay.
Just got a few more people, so over to Emily quickly, and then we'll scoot through, make sure everyone else has an opportunity.
Hey. Yeah, I was just reminded I did an Easter parade as a dinosaur. Really hilarious. And there were people in their garden sitting out, you know, their front garden, and they just saw this strange thing pass, and it was, you know, excellent for their day. They were in hysterics. You know, I think sometimes go a bit mad, and in a way that's kind of interesting to see what happens to your creativity when you're feeling a bit stuck or mad. You know, you feel like you're going mad, but maybe you're just having great ideas. And just, I feel like I've lost a lot of or I feel like, this is maybe going somewhere else, I feel like feel a little bit more free in a way to like make silly mistakes, or to like just do stuff without the risk of failure because there's less pressure. But then some days there's loads of pressure. So anyway, that's maybe a different conversation to have. I don't know. But all this is really fascinating, and I've been, yeah, the idea of the transposition that Jonathan was talking about, transposing, is really helpful actually. And thinking about the camera as an apparatus, because I've been doing some making work online and doing lots of classes and finding it really difficult sometimes, and that is a really nice way to think about it. I think that would be really helpful. And remember I've been doing a acrobat stuck at home challenge, and that's been really great to just be feeling like you're making circus, and then it's also kind of like a photography project at the same time. So I'd have a look at that. And also I did a Zoom class or a Zoom discussion with Birds of Paradise Theatre. They're based in Scotland. I don't know if you know of them, but it was about accessibility and how we move forward with that on an online space, but also just in future in theatres, you know, in general. And it was really, really good. So I'd recommend looking up their resources if that's helpful to anyone. I can put the name in there. So yeah, thanks. I also now just really want to go climbing. No, I can't. But it's really nice to see you all. And thank you so much for organising, Vicky and Upswing team.
Thank you, Emily. Over to Eloise.
Hi, so I'll try not to make this really long. I'm a bit of a note taker, so I'll have like 4 pages of notes, so I'm going to try and condense them. So I think the things that I'm personally taking away from this, well, firstly, I think I said before, like I'm actually a dancer, but I've kind of just been doing circus stuff for the last sort of 3 or 4 years. And actually for my final project, I was putting on a circus show, and now obviously with all the coronavirus stuff, everything has to be done digitally. And I was really looking forward to making kind of an immersive piece. And something that's really quite talked about in the dance industry, I think, is the theme of like authenticity. So it's interesting to me that it's sort of carried on over into circus as well. And I have so much stuff here. Yeah, so it's interesting to sort of look at what authenticity is to me, because I don't know if anybody sort of read the comment I put in the group chat, but I was talking about how, for example, trampoline artists, they don't restrict themselves by obviously trying to perform their tricks and stuff on the ground with gravity. But then I think somebody else made the comment of sort of using the camera to almost like trick people into thinking that impossible tricks are possible. But to me, that's sort of what circus is, because I think circus to me feels really unrestricted, and using things like that can kind of enhance performance quality rather than damage it. But yeah, so it's interesting to think about. And yeah, and also sort of a comment to what Joe was saying earlier about people. I think I was kind of like, yeah, I get that, because it's kind of the position that I'm in now, where these kind of like academic talks about circus, I mean, I didn't really even know that they happened until my mum literally just kind of came across this and sent me the link, like, this sounds like you'd like it. But yeah, it's also really interesting to, and I think Bex was saying as well about inclusivity. So it's also interesting, I think, especially now, whilst everybody is stuck at home, how we can kind of get more people interested in it. And yeah, I have 1,000 things to say, but I'll leave it at that for now. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eloise. Feel free to pop anything else in the chat. I'm going to head to Aideen.
I think I've pretty much emptied my thought processes, kind of. I'm very I'm thinking about this a lot at the moment, because next week my third years will graduate in the most normal way they possibly can. And even with the much more relaxed restrictions in Sweden, I still won't have all of them here being able to do their acts, whatever, and they're kind of, I'm currently in like it's a very strange thing to try and organize this while you're actually trying to do it at the same time. It's one thing being able to plan it and then actually just be stuck in the middle of it. So I'm finding it extremely inspiring, because even after the last conversation, you know, the creative work that I was working on with my students had already given me such incisive questions that, I don't know, they love what they're doing at the moment. And I think that in some ways the worry that they would feel somehow hard done by or left out has been proving not to be so real for a lot of them in many ways. And I think it's to do with the fact that there are other people around them who are already thinking about these things and who are able to give them questions that can help them through this. And it's kind of lucky that we have summer coming up now, because then we have, in some ways, quite a lot of time to then prepare for whatever after the summer brings. I'm really excited about all of this. I'm really excited about the fact that we can now have an excuse to start actually traveling around the country again in small groups. Nobody can stop us, because that's the only way we're allowed to do it. And also because of the fact that we have access to digital things that we didn't have access to before. And then the last thought that popped into my head just now is that I was at a meeting of the charitable organisation that I work with here in Sweden, Plans Without Borders, yesterday, who of course have had to cancel all of their trips to different countries for the rest of the year, which is a little bit disastrous in some ways, because they can't keep the money that they would have used for those. And then it's trying to figure out a way of spending that money and still trying to do the same work. And of course that is to do with the same accessibility and inclusivity question, because those, you can't really do an online stream to a refugee camp in Lebanon, for example, or whatever. So it's another side of the coin kind of thing. Thank you so much. This has been really inspiring, as always.
Thanks, Aideen. Last few, over to Susan. Oh.
Yeah, super interesting. I think the word that I will carry away with me is transposition today. My first understanding of transposition is actually about, in music, it's a change of pitch. So to suit someone's voice, you change the pitch of the written music, you transpose it. So there's something about transposition being extrapolated into all sorts of other ways. There's not just the transposition of skills, but there's the sort of a transposition of rules or no rules. And there's also the thing that sometimes non-experts of a particular medium will break the rules because they don't know the rules, but then they might come up with something new or even more creative than people who know the thing really well and think it has to be done a certain way. So I think that's really exciting. And as an overly emotional and physical person, I always need to acknowledge what we are losing, the human physiology, the part that is the bit we're missing. But at the same time, a recognition of how exciting this time is and what an extraordinary opportunity is, and how it is forcing us to think creatively, how it is forcing us to change our habitual ways of doing and being and thinking, and even meeting. You know, it would have been very, very difficult for me to be in the same room with this bunch of people ordinarily. And that is an incredible opportunity. On a personal level, I'm getting so much out of this period. That's not to say I don't have days where I cry or feel really shit or have high anxiety, but the potential of what it is doing, because we've been forced into something so incredibly abruptly, that, and what's coming out of it is all this creativity and all this different thinking and all of this extraordinary sort of stuff. So really nice to get these stimuli as well from from these other ways of thinking about these things, because then it's like, for me, it's like collaboration. Your brain then sparks in different directions in ways that you don't just think of by yourself. So even coming into contact with another medium, you think about things in a different way, and you transpose your understanding of choreography to the camera or to the circus trick or whatever. So anyway, that's what I come away with this from. And also just to respond a little bit to Aidin, what you said about the young people, the way they're responding to this challenge incredibly creatively. It's really kind of incredible. At Lavan, the second year dance students have put all of their choreographic practice into an online document, which has some film, it has some poetry, it has some images, and it's beautiful. And it's them taking their ideas and putting them in another realm. It's kind of fantastic, even though we're missing something. But anyway, thank you very much, Vicky and Claire and Upswing.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, final two, we'll go to Kate and then Summer and Raphael. Oh, let's unmute.
Kate has gone. Okay.
Am I here?
Yeah,
Okay.
there you are.
I think it's quite interesting, because the Aidin and Susan and myself all are teaching in this medium within this realm at the moment, and I keep, when we have these discussions, just keep thinking, how does this inform the teaching? Bearing in mind that this may be something that we need to adopt, moving forwards as another form of performing and presenting circus. So how can we distill conversations like this into our teaching? I think that what's really affirming is that a lot of the conversations we're having here are in some ways happening within the students' groups as well. And I think it's really important they know that these sort of conversations are happening at this level. And so what they're doing is really groundbreaking. So I've been having thoughts like that. Also, I really loved what Raphael said about Circus on the Moon, and how we have no idea what the landscape's going to look like after this, and in terms of our own resilience. And then also I keep coming back to our own students and emerging artists and how we can build up their resilience, creative resilience and emotional resilience, so that they can negotiate whatever landscape is beyond this. So lots of thoughts around that I've been having. Thank you, everyone, and particularly Upswing. It's been really fascinating.
Thank you, Kate. So last but not least, Summer, Raphael.
We will try to be as short as possible, so I will try to speak very fast. First of all, I would like to clarify the fact that all we said about transgressing the rule and applying new rules, this adapt to a very specific area if we do different areas in the digital circus. This does not apply to do a show captation or to the research of retranscribing, can I say that? No. Retranscribing, or to film a show that already exists. This doesn't apply to that, and Mark started to talk about this a little bit the last time and a little bit this time, about how the character can look at the camera instead of the public, how do you film a live show, etc. This is another very, very interesting subject that would deserve a full would deserve a full conversation on that. So to be clear, when we talk about a new set of rules, we don't speak about this category of digital circus. I'd like to quickly answer about the Jurassic Park effect of Jonathan, like a cake where you keep adding layers and at the end it doesn't taste like, it's not good. It's not good. And to avoid that, this is just by being honest with who we are as circus artists. And I come back to the analogy of a Chinese pole. I have a Chinese pole, I have a stick, what can I do with it? And not, oh, but what if I had another Chinese pole and then another Chinese pole and then another Chinese pole? So it's just by, I've got a protocol or something I'm happy to experiment with, And as the circus artist, I'm just gonna find every damn thing I can do with it. Okay, then I'd like to say another thing, that digital circus can bring other things and can help us as circus artists, as contemporary circus artists, to sharpen our tools and to deepen our knowledge of the circus and our practice of it. I explain myself a lot in the circus school, and as a circus artist, we all are thinking about what Summer and me, we call dramaturgic acrobatics, meaning how do I tell a story with the acrobatic movement?
What is the sense of the movement?
What is the sense of the movement? And how do I put meaning into the movement, which is basically storytelling with circus tools. I believe that digital circus and cinematic circus would help to understand that. I explain myself. Normally, in the movies, ask yourself the question, in regular movies, when do you see acrobatics? When is it that you see acrobatics in a movie? 90% of the time, it's either a chase, somebody running after somebody, or a fight. Those are the moments where you see acrobatics that actually help to understand the story. I believe that with circus, we can adapt acrobatics and tell stories in more than 2 different categories of scenes, not only chase or fight, but we could have a love scene with acrobatics, a comic scene with acrobatics. I mean, this is not new. Just watch the movies of Buster Keaton or Chaplin. We can have a dialogue with acrobatics. What I'm trying to say is that what is it to be true to circus is acknowledge it, what our language is made of. And another point, in the contemporary circus, to understand what contemporary circus is, we called a lot people out of circus to direct circus shows, meaning at the beginning of contemporary circus, we had directors from theater, directors from dance coming to direct a show of a bunch of acrobats and jongleurs. I believe that now is the time to do the other way around, to have a circus artist that come and direct a bunch of movie people. And I'll let the...
For me, it was just what was really, really important is the fear factor. For me, I don't think we have to fear so much of going into this world. I think that in circus, that's the basis of our work, in fact, is fear. I mean, imagine the fear you had when you did your first salto, right? So you researched, you learned the technique, you learned exactly how to do it in order to perfect the salto. And this is just another tool that you need to just spend a little time, research, learn, watch movies, watch videos. What do you like? What don't you like? And then how can you do that?
Can I say something? I believe also one of the characteristics of circus, when we said all the characteristics, the crossroad, etc., that I said, one very important is the catharsis. The importance is not to do a double somersault. The importance is not to play with the rule of a certain word. The importance is that the spectator or the telespectator or the people at home, they watch somebody in the air to fight their own fear of the emptiness. If we find digital ways to activate the catharsis, just like we do it live, I think what I'm saying is a good question to ask ourselves.
For us, mainly, to put it in a nutshell, it's just the fine balance between circus and cinema. So we need to, for quality purposes and to help us to keep creating in this world, it's to find the good balance and knowledge within the 2 fields and merge them and to crisscross and find ways that we can make the 2 work together in our eyes or in our perception.
Can I just, I'm sorry, can I just give an example of what Summer said? For example, studying the creation processes. What is the most regular creation process of circus? We set up a protocol and then we find all the things we can do with it. I'm not saying it's all the circus shows, but a lot of them. Like I find all the material possible I can have with whatever scenography I have or film, whatever. And once I find all the material, I try to link everything with a fil rouge or a dramaturgy. In cinema, it's the other way around. They first write everything, they first write the line, and then they find the images that goes with it. It's exactly the other way around. A movie, it's already done when the camera starts. A circus show is the other way around. So what does it mean? Mixing the two creation processes, meaning writing a screenplay where we have the whole story, but within it, leaving gaps for research. This is the work we're doing.
Yeah.
And thank you. Thank you so much.
All. Yeah,
thank you,
thank you very
Vicky,
much.
Claire, thank you for having us. It was a pleasure, everyone. Great conversation. Thank you.
Raphael and Summer, thank you so much for such brilliant contributions. And everybody, you know, again, going back to the analogy of the meal, everybody's brought some delicious, tasty food to this table. And what we're going to go away now and do is probably digest that meal, and things are going to come up, and questions and thoughts. So we're going to have another conversation in about 2 weeks. I guess we're going to think about what that conversation is going to involve. If anybody wants to reach out to us with suggestions of topics they want to bring to Slow Thinking, please let us know. But in the meantime, thank you everybody for taking part in this conversation. It's been epic. And we will see you soon, hopefully.